Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to Alter Egos. Before we get started this week, I just wanted to thank each and every one of our new Patreon supporters. Without the support of the broader community and those who choose to be a part of it, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Each month, we like to thank all our new supporters. For the month of July, we'd like to thank Sean, Alex, Scott, Todd, Will, Dan, Josh, Chris, and Jackie. So thank you to all of you who chose to support us during the month of July. We really do appreciate the commitment you've shown to support our show moving forward. In this week's episode of Alter Egos, we have a retrospective discussion of the in-flight report around all the up-and-coming products coming out for Marvel Champions. We hope you enjoy the podcast alongside the inclusion of a wonderful friend of the show, Brice. Thanks for listening. Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of Alter Egos. I'm your host Glenn, and with me this week is a very special guest, Brice, and alongside Joey. How's it going, boys?
Good, how about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Like I mentioned, we've got our special guest. He goes by Iron Brice, and he's one of our local players here in Melbourne. Brice, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself? So maybe we'll just start with what's your most played Marvel Champions deck, and what are you most looking forward to in the next few months?
I think you already know the answer to the question, but obviously people at home don't. So I am Iron Brice, also known as Brice, and Iron Man, 1,000 times Iron Man. I'll play that to the end of days. What was the other question, Glenn?
Oh, just what are you most looking forward to in the Rise of Red Skull product coming out soon?
Any more villains is a good number of villains to play against. I'm quite bored with the core set at the moment, so I'm super excited to have more to play with.
That's very understandable. To give a bit of context, we're recording on the 11th of August, and all three of us are actually in lockdown, so we actually haven't played with each other in person for, I feel like it's been about 5 months. I could be wrong on that number. It's probably been 5 months since we've all sat down together and had a game of Marvel Champs.
Feels like 47 years to me personally.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure the last time we played was actually in March. So that is 5 months ago.
That's my memory of things. And so we thought this week we'd do a bit of discussion about the Fantasy Flight Report from a bit over a week ago. I know it's a bit delayed, but better late than never. And we've got a few reflections on what's coming ahead. And it's great to have Brice come into the discussion too, as he has a lot of thoughts to share with what's coming up also. I guess there was a few interviews that I'd recommend people listen to. So there was one on Bad Publicity with Caleb Grace. And then there was one with Critical Encounters that had Michael Boggs on. So if you're needing to listen to something and want to learn more about the designers behind the game, I'd recommend listening to those two. All right, so let's jump into the announcements from the in-flight report. So first off, Marvel, they decided to announce the second campaign box for the game, that being the Galaxy's Most Wanted. I guess we'll just start off with, what's your initial reaction to the fact that we're going cosmic and we're going to get the Guardians of the Galaxy crew, hopefully, next year?
Yep, so I was actually quite surprised that they even announced the next story box. I was kind of expecting similar to last year where they just had like the silhouettes and said, there's another story box coming. It's kind of odd going to space so quickly, but I'm down for it. At least it's not more Avengers. Yep.
And so
we've got enough of those.
Brice, how many times are you going to say I am Groot, do you reckon, in the next year of the game?
As many as I can. Like, the Guardians are great. Like, it's such a beloved franchise, element of Marvel. I remember one of my good friends, Leaf. We went and saw the second movie with his now wife, and she was the loudest one laughing in the theater, and the whole theater was cracking up. So there's just something about the Guardians that has such a feel-good family kind of fun. It's really awesome to see it coming to Marvel Champions.
Yeah, I kind of see where Joy is saying, where he's like the transition's a bit jarring. It's not sort of like that bridge that you've been thinking about, at least thematically. But I think it's great that we get a diverse roster of traded heroes quite early in the game. I think potentially a third cycle of Avengers would have killed the momentum a little bit. I think we all know that crew can handle most situations. So it's great to see what other part of the Marvel universe they can kind of refine and work on. And if you want villains, you're going to get another 5. So there's a lot of excitement there too.
Yes.
Also, to be fair to the Avengers, like I'm pretty sure in the Marvel universe, they just hand out Avengers cards on every street corner. So there are a lot of Avengers. Almost everyone is an Avenger in the Marvel Comics universe.
0 cost for honorary Avenger. So yeah, they literally hand it out for free.
So yeah, we got 5 new villains. I think Caleb mentioned that it's confirmed that Ronan, Nebula, the Collector, I think has 2 scenarios, and I don't think we know what the 5th one is just yet. But
they mentioned it. I can't remember the name. It's a comics only thing, and I've never read the comic. I've never read the Guardians comics. It's Brotherhood of something.
Yeah, so we're getting 5 ones, and the Collector has 2 scenarios. Do you think we're going to get 2 versions of the Collector, or do you think it's the same Collector over 2 different main schemes, sort of, or like different scenario, card sets? What are your guys' thoughts?
I don't think it makes that much sense to use the same Collector for both, even though it would save card space. It's only like 2 free cards. It'll make a lot more sense to tailor each Collector to the scenario, similar to how Green Goblin and Green Goblin / Norman Osborn work in the Green Goblin scenario pack.
I love that they did that with Green Goblin. I think it feels like you're playing 2 different packs. I think it would feel more like playing the same product, even if you tailor the scheme differently, having the same villain with the same stats and the same text box. So I'm hoping they go 2 different collectors, so we get value for money there.
Yep. And they happen to show one of the Collector cards. So, we've seen that he's going to be more of a schemer than an attacker. He's got 2 scheme, 1 attack. And one of the scenarios is called Infiltrate the Museum. And the main concept of the decks of the scenario seems like if there are cards placed in the collection, that the players lose the game. So they're kind of introducing alternate lose conditions to the game, which is quite interesting. And we don't really know what Rise of Red Skull has to offer in that regard. But you guys looking forward to a bit more scenario diversity and different sort of conditions to how the players have to overcome the scenario?
Absolutely. Diversity is key, especially when you have still at this point, even when this product's released, still not a ton of options for scenario packs to play. Diversity is key. So anything that makes every scenario feel fresh, I reckon, is going to be a win for the game.
Yeah, it also helps that it modifies the value of particular cards, for instance, because you only go into the collection if you're gone from play to the discard pile. Things like allies, energy barrier, cards that are traditionally quite powerful actually lose a decent amount of value, but cards that have one-off effects that you may not generally be building so much around, like your events and whatnot, which you can build a little bit around, but not fully, because you're not going to have them every turn. They get a bit more value because they're not going into play and then into the discard, so they're not adding to the collection.
Yeah. I think I kind of like the idea that maybe, we haven't seen Rise of Red Skull, so I'm not sure how pertinent it is now, but I think I like the idea of you get to a scenario and you can't beat it with the deck that you've built to beat every other scenario. And for like that one scenario, you really have to think about, well, what am I actually going to put in this deck to overcome the challenge that's presented here? I know a lot of players seem to like to take the one hero through multiple scenarios. I'm actually someone that I quite like trying to find the correct answer to the puzzle each and every time. It just so happens that so far you haven't needed to kind of do that much tinkering to overwhelm the scenario. But I think this scenario is good. Yeah.
So are you saying, like, that's totally different to the way I play, and I find that fascinating. So you'd look at a scenario and you'd look at all the heroes that you had in front of you and you'd say, this is my best starting point, and build a deck and an aspect completely tailored to that. You wouldn't have any sort of intrinsic preference where you go, I love this hero, so I'm going to try and make this hero work.
I think once we get to Galaxy's Most Wanted, I think I'll want just to have a taste of that again. Mainly because in Lord of the Rings, you really had to do that. You had to build the correct sort of deck to overcome the scenario. It wasn't the other way around. For at least in the way I'm playing, which is progression style. Once you get deeper into the card pool and you can get a bit more synergy going on with the cards, you often can go, I'll take my elf deck and just play it into the scenario. But I kind of like the idea of maybe like Joey said, maybe I shouldn't run this many allies, or maybe I shouldn't chump block because that's going to put one card closer to the lose condition. And so maybe it doesn't even alter your deck building, it alters your play pattern. And I think that's still a rewarding process.
I think you're also, you've got that solo bias that's coming in again where, in our group we play in, nobody touches Doctor Strange because that's Shane's character. Nobody touches Iron Man because that's my character. Nobody touches Black Widow. So it would be a bit trickier in a multiplayer setting if someone has pretty much locked out a character to be able to use that one.
Yeah. I mean, multiplayer, I guess. Yeah, I think you'd still for this scenario, you could have a discussion of, hey, we probably should focus on playing our events a bit more, or hey, if you are going to commit to the board, do you have enough resources to then get the card back in the discard pile? It seems like a really exciting scenario that they're presenting. We're talking about just 2 cards that they've shown out of the 20 or 30 that are in the scenario. So I mean,
that's how starved we are for content, Glenn. That's how starved we are for content. Give us scenarios, please.
Yeah. There's 13 in that scenario.
Yeah. We don't know. We don't know if there's modular sets as well, but that's a pretty thin sort of signature set. I guess that makes sense. But I love that they're making the collector a main component of it. He has 2 scenarios. So I guess really the question is, do we think he's the big bad? Do we think he comes back at the end and trips up Ronan? Or do you reckon Ronan is still going to be that the guy at the end of the line?
He's powerful enough in the comics that it could go either way, because the collector is like an elder being or something. He is quite powerful, even if he's focused on what he wants to do, i.e. collecting. So thematically it works either way, that he comes in and decides, hey, I want whatever the end goal is instead, and takes over for Ronan. But either way could work, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yep.
To me, I'm just excited to have an order or progression order to the story and the way it unfolds. I still go back and forth in my head going, does it go Rhino, Claw, Ultron? It probably has Claw as the final one because he's the hardest, but there's nothing the game's telling you as to what order you play those core villains in.
Yeah, I think the closest they get to linking it is, I can't remember where the text is. Is it in the?
It's on the main schemes actually, because the main scheme for Ultron reveals him as the Crimson Cowl or something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's
but if you feel
the thinnest of narrative threads.
Yeah. My favorite card in the whole game has to be the scheme Breaking and Taken. Flavor text, Rhino is breaking things and taking them.
Yeah.
Kudos. That is excellent.
Yeah. Apparently, I think Caleb or Michael was spoilering that, saying that Nate French came up with that one. So we have him to thank for that.
Thanks, Nate.
I think the other thing I was going to mention about that box was the campaign mode that they're introducing. It sounds like they're trying to make each campaign its own unique experience. And so for the Galaxy's Most Wanted, they're introducing a market style game, as well as something to do with the Milano. They seem to suggest that you could upgrade the ship as you go along. Those both sound like really interesting mechanics to me. I wondered what you guys thought about.
Theoretically, I would be so happy for a marketplace. It would take me right back to the first Fantasy Flight game that kind of hooked me, Imperial Assault. And as the campaign progressed, you got lightsabers, you got all sorts of things that boosted you up your stats. And and it made each campaign episode feel quite different. Me and my play group, we've almost finished the fan made Infinity Gauntlet campaign, and we love it. There's a lot of great aspects to it, but maybe one missed opportunity was something like that. Something that progresses where you become more powerful, or progresses the story. So I'd be thrilled if there was a marketplace, something like that. That'd be great.
Yeah. I think it'll be really interesting, and it probably means that it ultimately extends the replayability of that campaign, so to speak, because each time you could go and buy, potentially, theoretically different things. And, I think anything that increases the replayability of this game excites me, because often I've found with Arkham, the incentive to go back is because you want to try a different deck as a hero, not as much try out like the levels that you can pull in the campaign itself. But that's just I guess that's my personal opinion about that.
Well, we've already got so much replayability out of what they gave us in the core set too. Like, you take it to that next level with something like that, and then I reckon you open yourself up to a much wider market. Definitely.
So I guess we should talk about the two heroes that they've shown that go with this box. They are namely Groot and Rocket. So we'll talk about Groot first. So Groot's got a 4 recovery, outlaw, and he has a ability called Growth Spurt, which is action, place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10, limit once per round. And the flavor text is, I am Groot. He has a hand size of 6 and 10 hit points. And then on his hero side, he is a 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense hero with the Guardian trait. And he has a unique ability called Flora Colossus. Force Interrupt. When Groot would take any amount of damage, remove that many growth counters from him. For each growth counter removed this way, prevent 1 of that damage. What do you guys think about them introducing a very, what appears to be defensive hero from the get-go? And do you feel like it fits into the flavor of what you'd expect from a Groot card, so to speak?
It would definitely fits the flavor for Groot, I feel. Just that's generally what Groot does. He's normally a big guy defending everyone. And it is nice to have what looks to be a more defensive focused character. We don't really have anything that's really that defensive at the moment. So the best we have for defense are Spider-Man, Captain America, and I guess Black Widow. Black Widow being a little bit odd on that front. But
I might interject and disagree. What about Hulk? Obviously not out in all places in the world, and I know my pack is still in the mail, but 18 health and 3 defense, if I remember correctly. That seems like a real strong kind of protector if you wanted to make him that way.
Yeah, but he's got basically nothing else that combos well with it, and the hit points aren't actually that important for a defender, because once you lose hit points, you have to recover them, and whereas if you can avoid losing hit points like Black Widow does, you can stay and defend more aggressively.
Still think there's a case for Hulk as a defender, but we can agree to disagree.
I mean, yeah, Hulk. When I saw Groot, I did kind of immediately think of Hulk too, because I think he's the only other hero with the 3 defense line that we know of at the moment. I need to look at the Ant-Man card again. I can't remember if he has a 2 defense or 3 on the Giant side. But 3 defense is a really interesting stat line regardless. Yeah, Ant-Man's the same. He's got a 3 defense stat line. I think it's because, like Brice pointed out, I think it's because you just naturally gravitate towards like 3 defense. That seems like a good place to start with a protection deck. Have they said what aspect Groot comes with? Like, do we know?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, so we don't know if he's justice, or it'd be cool if
I would assume protection.
Yeah, kind of makes sense.
I think it was kind of implied by the video after the in-flight report on that same weekend that Groot was protection and Rocket was aggression, but I don't remember if they ever actually outright stated it or not.
Okay.
Thematically, that totally fits, so I'm hoping that's the case. That's how I'd want to play Rocket straight out the box and Groot straight out the box.
Yeah, and like they did show that one card from Groot. Apparently a lot of the cards are titled, I am Groot. So this one is all capitals, and it's an attack, a hero action, deal damage to an enemy equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. And so it seems like he's built entirely around trying to get the counters onto Groot, but then only removing them when you really have to. And so I think that defensive play of trying to not lose hit points that Joey, you're mentioning, really would come into effect where if you're losing the counters, you're unfortunately not getting as much value from his event suite, or at least this one card that they've shown off.
It's a good mechanic. I like it.
Yeah. I think anything that kind of diversifies how a defensively based hero can function really opens up a bit of the card pool that otherwise kind of just sits there. Like when I see Groot, I immediately just think like, like defensive stance and expert defense, like are very interesting cards with him because you can try and stop the damage from ever hitting Groot himself, which is really interesting.
Can we chat as well? This is an interesting precedent, Groot, because it's the first time Alter Ego and Hero have had exactly the same name, so it doesn't matter which, you're still getting the same character, and that opens up a lot. I've seen a lot of speculation in the past. Oh, how are they going to do this hero? Or because they don't have an alter ego. Well, now they have a precedent for how they deal with that. Same name, it works.
Yeah, it means that cards that reference that particular character could come out at any time and be playable on both sides, I guess. So if you had a card that references Groot or Rocket, it's going to be playable either side, which we'll compare to later.
And if you got Ally Groot at some point in the future and someone else had that in their deck, never playable unless Groot was removed from the game.
Technically, they would have to update the RRG because the alter ego would have to be the subtitle on Ally Groot, which it wouldn't be because they wouldn't have Groot written on the card on an Ally card. But like I'm sure they've thought that through already. It's probably just an update that hasn't happened yet because it doesn't need to happen yet. The uniqueness rules in the RRG from version 1.3 wouldn't cover that scenario though.
Yeah.
And the outlaw trait, is this new first time we're seeing outlaw as well? That's cool.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it on anyone else from a hero standpoint. I'm not sure. I don't think any of the minions had it either. But that'd be interesting if they actually made something happen with outlaw. All around, I just think it's really interesting. We've got new traits, like a new theme. It's great. So I guess, to go with Groot, one would expect that Rocket Raccoon is somewhere in the box, which he is. And Brice, this is one of the main reasons you're on tonight is the tech returns basically with Groot. Rocket.
Yeah. Give me all the tech and then give me more tech.
Yeah, so Rocket Raccoon, he's got 3 recovery. He's a genius and an outlaw. He has the Tinkering, which is an action. Choose and discard a tech upgrade you control. Draw 2 cards, limit once per round, with a hand size of 6 and 9 hit points. And then he's on his hero side, he is a Guardian. He has 2 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense. So one of the lowest stat lines that we've seen. And he has the ability Murdered You. Response, after you deal excess damage to an enemy, draw 1 card. And the flavor text says, that's it, you can attack me, you can all call me names, but no one touches my blaster. So he's very protective of the tech that he wields. What are you guys' initial thoughts of what appears to be a bit more of a glass cannon, aggressive sort of hero that blends Iron Man with, I guess, Hulk in a way, like the damage and the tech?
There's Captain Marvel in here too, you realize, like with draw on both sides of the card, alter ego and heroes. So that was my first thought. Like Captain Marvel, lots of card draw, I love that. Get it in a different kind of package this time around.
Yeah, it's not as resource focused.
Captain Marvel also has a higher resource density than most characters, which we don't know if that's the case with Rocket or not. But the thing that really strikes me is that this Murdered You ability only triggers up excess, but he's got 1 attack. So like you're going to have to be triggering that with events currently, because he can't actually deal excess damage with his own hero card currently.
Right. What about so we'll talk about his upgrade as well, the Particle Cannon. So it's a 3-cost tech weapon upgrade, restricted. It enters play with 2 charge counters on it, and it has the hero action attack exhaust particle cannon and remove 1 charge counter from it. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. This attack gains overkill and ranged. So like if you trigger particle cannon, this new card that we'll talk about in a sec, like would that trigger the Motordew ability with how the rules are currently set up?
Yep. This would work.
Okay.
And we know there is a change to the word "you" coming up, so hopefully they don't break it. But my understanding of the intention is it should still work under those new rules as well. We just don't know what those are yet. But so you should be able to trigger that, kill something. But the fact is that's got a limited number of uses. So you're gonna have to throw it away and get some more cards in Alter Ego at some points, because this doesn't have the uses keyword, so it's not discarded when it's on 0.
Yeah, so that's a critical point, is that it seems like he has tech cards in his set that you play, and they come with counters on them and all that, but they don't leave play once you've used them. So that feeds into his entire build of you flip the Alter Ego, discard and draw 2 more cards, and hopefully get some fresh ways to, I guess, remove enemies from the board so that you can keep triggering. His Motordew ability also lends itself to multiplayer, but more importantly, and this is what I love about this game, is that I think it goes really well with Thor, and I always felt like the Thor Rocket dynamic already in the MCU at least was really fun. So I like that you can already bring that to the table quite easily, because someone can play Defender of Nine Realms, put the minion into play, and then Rocket can blow him up and get the card. So I quite like everyone gets cards in that situation.
Like shooting clay pigeons, you line them up, I'll knock them down. That's awesome.
Yeah. I just I think the team combinations are going to really open up once we get going here with this extra set of heroes. I guess from a efficiency standpoint, Joey, you always seem to know about these things. How good is Particle Cannon as a card, where it's like a split? What do you call it? Swinging web kick, but with overkill. Like, is that good? It's like a better
web kick is already one of the most efficient basically the most efficient non-conditional damage card in the game. So you can get better with conditional things like Gamma Slam, your Repulsor Blast flipping off the top of your deck, and etc. But the web kicks, it doesn't require anything, and this is basically, like as you said, it's a split web kick, so that's the same effectively, like efficiency wise. So with the added benefit of overkill, which is harder to trigger because it's only 4 instead of 8, and ranged is strictly positive. It's only going to mean that you don't take retaliate damage. So yeah, it's actually very good on that front.
Yep. And Brice, is there anything else you want to mention about Rocket? Anything that's grabbing you from what we've heard, or
I've been, to be honest, I've been super excited for Rocket ever since the organized play mats from the launch kit came out. And you can just see him and his tail flitting around in the background. He's shooting over Thor's shoulder, actually, fittingly for your combo that you were talking about, Glenn. The art looks great. I'm super excited to play him, see what his set is. Maybe this is my new tech deck when it comes out. Put Iron Man in the box for a little while.
Yeah, I think it's all very exciting stuff. And the FFG also showed a little bit of an extra spread, which showed a We Are Groot card, and there was some sort of signature card for Rocket, and then there was a card called Flora and Fauna, which had both Groot and Rocket on the art, which was basic, and so we don't really know what that does yet, but there's a lot more to come in the space for Galaxy's Most Wanted. So looking forward to that coming, I think in February they said. So that's basically just around the corner, really. We've waited so long for scenarios. We'll get Rise of Red Skull, Kang. We'll just rush through to the end of the year, and then it'll be February before you know it.
If I had one wish with Rocket, there's some card in there. Please be some card in there where he's obsessing over stealing people's body parts, like a leg or an eye or something like that. I'd love to see that represented in one of the cards. That would be just perfect.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the comic version, but I definitely, anything that emulates the MCU version that they did, I'm all for. I recently read a run from last year, the 2019 Guardians, and I quite enjoyed how they did Rocket there, and it was a bit different. So I'm hoping there's a little bit of that sort of. I guess he's a bit more reflective, and I really am looking forward to seeing what they do with that character.
Me too.
Yeah. So let's move on to something a bit more up and coming. So we've finished cycle 1 now with all our Avenger heroes, and very soon we're going to have a whole bunch of scenarios. But Fantasy Flight Games also announced that the cycle 2 heroes officially. We've known for a little while now that who might be coming, but not exactly in what form. And so they showcased the 4 new heroes, which are Ant-Man, Wasp, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch. And they've been released in that order, is my understanding. So another wave of Avengers, but this time they seem focused around some team-up abilities, so synergy between 2 heroes. And in the case of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, they directly, in their alter ego form even, have abilities that synergize off each other, which I thought was really interesting. Which pack are you guys looking forward to the most? And what are your thoughts about how they're approaching cycle 2 of the game?
I actually, the most interesting for me is probably Ant-Man, followed closely by Quicksilver. Ant-Man has a bunch of flipping effects, like he flips into one form, he gets an effect, and I really like that, just in general. And Quicksilver, I just think the readying effect that he has on his hero ability just looks super interesting to mess around with most aspects, as well as the leadership with the morale boost shenanigans, which have been fun for me previously, but not always ideal.
Yeah. What about yourself, Bryce? Which hero are you looking forward to the most?
Kind of a split answer. I'm fascinated by all the shade that FFG's been drawing over this gigantic card for Ant-Man, and people already freaking out about how they're going to sleeve it and how they're going to use it. Like, that ire being thrown at the company for innovating and doing something different really puzzles me a little bit. So I've been thinking a lot about giant cards and how fun that'll be. I'm excited by that. I don't mind. I'm sure I'll find a storage solution that works. But so that's production wise. But if you're going based on the cards, I think Scarlet Witch kind of opens up an interesting new era. Like, more to your point, as you were saying earlier, Glenn, like, if you are the type of player that likes looking through the box and finding something that's going to solve a particular puzzle, I think her chaos control ability, interacting with boost icons on the card to have an effect, kind of ushers in a new era of kind of different decks, and that's really interesting for me.
Yeah, I guess touching on the sleeve thing you mentioned, I'm with you, Bryce, that I guess I'm a bit perplexed by it. But my concern is, and it's probably the biggest concern, is if there's backlash now, I'm worried that they'll never consider doing it again. And I'd really actually like to see a villain that does it. Is what I like. That's my pipe dream for what the giant cards can do. So I just think, like,
calm down. They're trying different stuff. This is still Andrew Navarro, I think, right? Head of production studio, from what I read. It was his idea. So they're trying to give you a bit of fun and trying to add those thematic elements to the table that make you feel like you're playing the character. And suddenly the card gets gigantic. And I just think that's such a great aid for people that want to have a thematic evening, play a thematic game. Like, I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think
it's also
you go, Joey.
It's also been done in the Transformers TCG, and the paper hinges lasted quite well in that game. So I wouldn't expect too much wear and tear on the cards, even if you do just use them normally. But if people are having issues with sleeving them, the easiest way is to use side loading sleeves. Allows you to cover both sides pretty easily.
See, we've solved it. Problem solved. Nothing to worry about here. Move along, people.
For me, it's going to be fitting him on the playmat. I think is going to be the trouble. But
you just buy another playmat. You're fine.
Yeah, I saw the playmat for Ant-Man. I quite liked it, but I guess the other thing you got to think about is imagine you're imagine in an alternate universe where we're in a board game store in Melbourne and you're sitting down and you're playing Ant-Man and someone sees you flip from like a normal card to the giant card. I think that is just a huge draw to get someone into the game. They're like, wait, what? Like, what are you doing here? Like, what is this game and how can I be a part of this experience? And I think that's the draw of this game. Like, if you see someone playing some of the other LCGs, like it's like cool. Like the art looks great. You guys look like you're having fun. But like when someone can see something that the casual audience that they're trying to grab, if they can see someone playing with their favorite Marvel character in a really cool way, they're like, I want to be a part of that. Like I'm all about that. So I think it's 2 thumbs up for me. Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame that Miss Marvel, who also has their shrinking and growing power set, doesn't also get to benefit from this. But Miss Marvel's got a really good design in general, so I'll let it slide.
You have to
every time I look at her, every time I look at her now, I'm going to see that as a missed opportunity. Thanks, Joey.
I guess the only thing that's keeping her in my plus books is that she's always incredible with every new attack and thwart card that comes out. So she's got some stuff going for her still. So let's just talk briefly about Ant-Man. So Ant-Man has it's a 3-sided card. So there's Scott Lang, which is a civilian with 3 recovery, 6 hand size, 12 health, and has the response after you change to this form, heal 1 damage from Scott Lang. But when you flip him to Small Ant-Man, which is the tiny Avenger version, he has 2 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense, and he has a response after you change to this form, remove 1 threat from a scheme. And then Giant Ant-Man is 1 thwart, 3 attack, 3 defense, and response after you change to this form, deal 1 damage to an enemy. And he has the giant trait. I should also mention that Small Ant-Man has a hand size of 5 and Giant Ant-Man has a hand size of 4. So I think this whole mechanic's really interesting, and I like the idea that you can start an alter ego, flip to the form that you want to, and you can pick if you want to thwart or attack more, but also your hand size is going to be determined from it. So you have to really think about your resource management. I think there's like a lot of levers that as a player you have to pull to get the most out of the hero, and so I think it'll be really rewarding to journey with him. What are your guys' thoughts about how he functions overall?
So something that I noticed is that his defense stat is always respectable, regardless of which hero form he's in. Like it's 2 or 3. I thought that was kind of interesting because his other stats vary so widely, going from like one thwart is basically nothing, 2 thwart is the best we have, and then he's going from like the lowest attack to the highest attack. But then his defense stat is just kind of sitting there being like, yeah, this is always kind of okay. It's always at least half decent. So that will be interesting, and I just kind of like the idea of tiny Ant-Man. He's got his expert defense, he's blocking Rhino's charge, and he's just triggering an unflappable with this just tiny little ant stopping the Rhino charge.
I think the thing that stands out to me as well is they're starting to form a bit of a pattern here, where your She-Hulks and your Hulks and your giant Ant-Mans, their penalty for being such strong hitters is a smaller hand size. So maybe that's a bit of language within the game. The bigger and stronger and mightier you get, the lower your hand size is going to be. I don't know if that's something they're intending to do or just the way it's played out.
Yeah, I guess there's probably an element of that. I think I'm most intrigued by the giant and tiny traits and whether or not they get utilized a bit within each of their sets.
We've already seen one card that's utilizing it, the Pim Particles card.
Yeah. So Ant-Man gets his own resource card, which, Pim Particles, as Joey said, which has the hero response. After you spend this card, he'll do 2 damage from your hero if you're in giant form, or draw 1 card if you're in tiny hero form. And it's 1 wild resource. So, it's a very different way to do, I guess, a resource generator, but also a heal card. It seems like a great card all around.
Assuming you don't run rules as written. Under the current rules, the wording of that is only active while it's being spent, but you can only trigger it after it's been spent. So technically you could under the current rule book, you can never actually trigger that card.
I'm just trusting that all these sort of rules things that they like when we get to the product release that there's at least some communication either in the insert or in the RRG that like they update it when it launches. Because I think before the last update, did we get an update each time we got a hero pack? Like what?
Not necessarily.
I
think the most recent one was just after Thor, and it was because Thor had issues with Loki and the lightning strike, was it?
Yeah, I guess the thing to remember would be like your average person buying the pack off the shelf and going home. Like they're probably like they're gonna know how this card is meant to work, and so I mean,
I was actually just reflecting something similar that like I'm so glad not to be playing a competitive game anymore where I care what the RIG says. Like if I'm curious, I'll delve into the RIG. If I'm not, I'll play it the way that I read it or the way that my tabletop group agrees to it. And it's just nice to have those options. You know, if you want to dive deep, gain expert level knowledge like Joey has, you can do that. Or if you just want to house rule it, you can do that. And there's nobody telling you one way or the other, really.
Yeah, I think it's more. I guess it's good eventually that there's consistency, so that there's a reference point. But I guess when it comes out, I just want to play the pin particles. Like don't tell me that the card is blank. I want to heal and I want to draw cards. But yeah, I think Joey, I think you both raised. I think there's good points on both sides, and I think basically all they have to do is release the ROG as it launches, and everyone's happy because you don't have to check it, but for those that want to check it, it should be there, which would be nice.
And it's absolutely worth saying there are both mindsets in the playing community. I think you know we both represent different sides of the equation here.
Also, the main reason I bring it up is they're so close to having it actually work that basically if it wasn't a bold trigger, it would work. That's the only problem with it.
Yeah, I wonder why. It's tricky because I think if it wasn't bold text, sorry, I think the problem would have been if it wasn't bold text. And I don't want to get too delve into rules, but I think maybe you draw the card as you're spending, and so you then would have the option of the card that you draw to be playable. I think the intention of the card is that you spend everything, then draw the card after you've committed to spending fully for the card.
Yeah, that. I think you still technically have that problem because you respond to the triggering condition immediately, and you're still in that resource window.
Oh, okay. Yes. Over my head. I think I'll just pin it up and we'll see where we go. But I think it'd be nice to get some clarification on that. I would agree. Like eventually, I would like to know how this card works. But yeah, those timing windows. I think they're a bit insidious. Really. I had no idea that that's how it worked. In my head, it was, anyway, spend fully and then draw. But it's good to know because I guess they also added the team building exercise one, speaking of timings, which is the 2-cost basic support in the pack with the hero action, exhaust team building exercise, arrow, play a card from your hand that shares a trait with your hero, reducing its resource cost by 1. So that, you know, it's further buying into your giant and tiny traits, but it's also forcing you to play the cards straight away. So you can't play multiple of these and get a discount off a singular card. Is there any particular hero you guys want to try this in, or is it kind of too early to say where this will really kind of fit in a deck?
I quite like it in She-Hulk. The She-Hulk Avengers deck has always been quite useful, quite good ever since the Captain America pack came out. And she has the Avenger trait, so it works with that. There's not a lot.
Just to clarify, so can you play it? Can you tap Avengers Tower, then tap this? Does that work?
I believe Avengers Tower says the next Avenger you play, so yes, that should work. But you can't use 2 of this because this says exhaust and then play play immediately. So things like Helicarrier and Avengers Tower work with this, but this doesn't work with itself, which is important because it's not unique and it's not max 1 per player.
I want to build a set of decks that just tap it to play Mansion for 1 less and just call it, we're building houses. Or like, building Corp Inc. or something. just the one card for the one discount.
I think for me, like, I'm the kind of player that largely ignored traits unless it was particularly relevant for my deck. And I really enjoyed your guys' previous episode on traits. It sort of made me think about it in a way that I hadn't think about it before. But I think for all the deck builders out there, this is that opportunity to set this card in front of you, look through everything you've got, and see what lines up and what takes your fancy. And I think the power in just having one card that makes you look at all the traits again and think back on things, that's huge, especially for the deck builders out there. That's gold.
For reference, most hero traits, because this is a hero action, can only be used on allies at the moment, but there are Avengers, Asgard, and there's like one Wakanda card which is in Black Panther's set, which is the Golden City. So generally speaking, you're just going to be using this on your allies currently, but unless you're an Avenger, in which case you can use it for some resource cards, and if you're Thor with your Asgard traits, you can use it on most of his set. Basically anything in Thor's set that actually stays in play is an Asgard card.
Well, that's fitting again, isn't it? Really, if you're mostly going to be playing this on allies, then it probably is more of an include in a leadership deck, and then a leadership deck playing team building exercise. Like, great, that's thematic. I love it.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Bryce, I think it's like a nice way, again, to like subconsciously introduce players to the idea of reflecting on traits and just seeing what you can, do to mess with those if you hadn't explored it before. Yeah, it's just one of those small things.
It does mess with my head that Gamma Slam doesn't have the Gamma trait, but I'm pretty sure the Gamma trait's supposed to represent the Gamma-based team, but it still messes with my head. It says Gamma right in the title.
Can I also make just a little note on the artwork? Fantastic to see Ironheart for the first time in Marvel. I'm super excited by that. Loving the comic.
Yeah. There's some interesting heroes in there for sure. Yeah, because there's Miles, and is that Brawn at the back, or is it?
That's Brawn.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a few different champions there, which is kind of cool to see.
I'm actually fairly certain that's a artwork from the Champions team, because that's Nadia, Wasp, Brawn, Miles, Ironheart, and I can't remember her name, but she's she has like the ability to like transform into various like spirit animals,
right?
Like Snow Hope or something.
Wasn't there that 90s book series? I think it was, where the people could turn into animals. I read as a kid.
Animorphs.
Yeah, that's it. Getting that Animorphs vibe. I guess they also briefly showed Ant-Man's nemesis, who, surprise, surprise, was Yellow Jacket. We don't really see much of what he's got, but he seems like he's got a pretty nasty upgrade that's a +2/+2. And there's an interesting card to nerf Iron Man, which is the Tech Theft, which treat the printed text box of each tech player's card as if it were blank. I thought that was interesting.
Boo. No, I'm excited.
Make your hand size have 1 for the turn. It's pretty nasty.
No, it only treats the text box as blank. I don't think the traits count. So you would still have your hand size, but you wouldn't have any of the effects, which would mean you could die.
Yeesh.
Oh, I misread it. Yeah, tech player card. Yeah, because he's not tech himself, is he? That's what I was thinking. I thought it blanked his ID box, but it blanks all the tech cards. That makes sense.
Yeah, so he loses like 7 to 8 hit points if he's fully built.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, really. I guess to complement Ant-Man, we've got Wasp here as well. So they've gone with Nadia Van Dyne. She has 3 recovery, and she has an ability called Girl, which is action, shuffle up to 2 cards with a printed mental resource from your discard pile into your deck, limit once per round. And she has a hand size of 6 and 11 hit points. And then interestingly, her small side is 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense, and has the response after Wasp or an event you play defeats a minion or side scheme, deal 1 damage to the villain. And her giant size is a 2/2/3 with a hand size of 5 also. And her thwart and attack have the star ability Threat you remove using your basic thwart power can be divided among schemes as you choose, and damage you deal using your basic attack power can be divided among enemies as you choose. So she's got the same sort of, I guess, skeleton of Ant-Man in that she's got 3 forms that she can be in, but she functions quite differently otherwise. Is there anything here you guys want to further add to how, I guess this is kind of going to go down with the difference between the two?
She should have the champion trait almost certainly. She's been in part of that team for a while now, and yet is missing it. It's just the Avenger trait, which I think she became after she became a champion. I don't think she was an Avenger when she first became a champion. I think she became that first, which is quite interesting.
I think her stat line is amazing. 223 is such a, like, I love Captain America at the moment, 222, but give me a 223 and the flexibility to divide the thwarting by schemes and the damage to different enemies. That's a pretty awesome stat line, I must say.
The flip side is, without that stat line, her ability would be useless. So she needs to have a pretty decent stat line to do that.
She's also bigger than every other hero. Like, she's giant. So I don't begrudge the fact that she's got that stat line. I think I'm very intrigued. Again, like Joey was saying earlier, like a morale boost deck with her is very interesting. And any future ways we can kind of really buff up those basic stats will be really interesting, because with her, it's very flexible. Like, let's say you could swing with a basic attack of 5 or 6, like,
Skilled Strike would be a good card for it. Put like 2 or 3 Skilled Strikes in one thing. You could swipe off the whole board sometimes.
yeah, or like
Strike, mean swing. Yeah,
against Ultron, like being able to just clear the drones really flexibly. Like, it's really interesting. Providing players with a different sort of solution to that puzzle. I guess the other thing we should probably just quickly cover is recursion. This hero, I guess we've seen Stark Tower before, and Black Widow has Safe House, but this is a sort of recursion ability where you can shuffle cards back into your deck. Sorry, by recursion, what I mean is that you're able to, cards that you've already seen in one go through your deck, you can play them or pitch them and then shuffle them back into the deck and then draw them again in the same deck cycle. And often those sort of abilities are quite strong. Do you guys think, what do you guys think about this ability? Do you think it's pretty balanced? It's like, where do you guys think it sits?
This one's a pretty weak version of recursion. Like, because it's just going into your deck, you still have to go grab it. It's just adding an extra copy of those cards per cycle. But obviously, you've got control of it, so you're going to select the cards that are higher value, and like, there are some really good examples of mental resource cards that you would want to grab, and you can also do things like Genius. Throw your Genius back in if you get a chance, and I'm never going to complain about that. Getting a second Nick Fury per deck cycle is pretty good as well, because he's a very high value card, and that's not even considering what you could potentially do with an aspect.
I think being able to take 2 cards and put them back in your deck when your deck is nearing the end is super powerful. Like, I think it depends where you're at in your deck cycle. Obviously, using this when your deck is full and you've only thrown a few different cards in there, you don't get as much selection. But to choose from a fully, a filled up discard pile and a very thin draw pile means you're probably going to pull those back next turn, or even now if you have a way to Avengers Mansion and start the chain. So I'm excited about it. And Strange is the only other one, I think, Glenn, that has recursion, right, with the ability to pull spells back, if I'm remembering.
Oh yeah,
right?
he can shuffle a spell card back into his deck and he draws a card, which is quite good.
That's bad.
Agent Coulson can get a preparation from the discard pile.
Yeah.
It's the one that I most often use. I
guess, like, to me, those seem a bit more restrictive, at least with the card pool that we have. Whereas this is, quite a larger portion of the card pool. And I think recurring, like shuffling uniques back in that you've already used. So like allies that have on play effects that then can come back via not like, so let's say you're not playing leadership and let's say you're playing a different aspect. The fact that you could still get those allies twice per deck through is very interesting to me as a potential build. Nick Fury twice seems, I guess it seems quite vanilla. Like it's not really creating a unique experience, I guess, other than this a very efficient ally. But if we see interesting mental resource allies in the future, I think it's quite interesting to see what we can do there. And Genius, like you said, Joey, I think one of Miss Marvel's strengths was being able to have that fourth double resource for one deck cycle. Really allowed you to outpace a lot of the villains. So it's nice to see that come back here as well.
We don't really have a deck yet that sort of encourages you to build a lot of mental cards in it. We've got, Captain Marvel, Iron Man encouraging you to go for energy. We have aggro decks with the Hulk that, encourage you to go for strength as a, fill it out to make it work. So this is nice to see something that maybe incentivizes you to build a deck with a lot of mental cards, and then you got full selection for what you pull back each turn. A lot of flexibility there.
Spider-Man can use Black Cat constantly to generate resources, is one thing you can do with mental currently, and you kind of incentivize to go mental if you play She-Hulk because of the superhuman law division, although Quinn Carrier has diminished that requirement a fair bit.
Yeah, I guess anything that pushes it forward is great. Like, I'm sure there's some mental resource cards in here that you'll be able to fit into these other heroes that already utilize that ability. I guess we should finally touch on the team up mechanic and team up card that they've introduced. So team up seems like it's a mechanic they're bringing into the cycle 2, where if you have the named characters in play that are on the team up card, then you can use the card for quite a powerful effect for often a reduced, for a cheaper cost than it would otherwise normally cost. So in the case of the Ant-Man and Wasp card, it's called Swarm Tactics, and it has the hero action change to your other hero form, ready your hero. And it costs 1, and that's quite a powerful effect, I would think. And so the fact that you not only get the triggered ability of the form that you flip to, but you also can ready them. Because it's a hero action, you have to change to your hero form, so you can't do any alter ego shenanigans. But it seems like a really interesting card that I think synergizes if you're both choosing to play those heroes. Do we know if they've got ally versions that go with them in the decks?
It was mentioned in the stream by Caleb, I believe, that solo players aren't out of luck, but we haven't actually seen the ally. Okay. I would assume signature, just because of the way they interact, or at least possibly for the next 2 that we're going to be talking about. Maybe these guys have basic or aspect versions, but we'll see what it actually is.
Yep. And Bryce, you're often playing a lot of multiplayer. How does your play group feel about team up, or like what are your initial thoughts about introducing this sort of mechanic to a game night?
I mean, I don't think we've really talked about it too much. I think there's an excitement for it. We talk about, especially my friend Leaf and I, we talk about thematic pairings. How can we kind of get 2 characters together that make fun or that resemble a movie that we have? I do remember seeing on some of the forums people like, FFG, don't you tell me who to pair with? Don't you, tell me who the best person to pair with is? But I'm a theme player. There's a reason that pretty much exclusively play Fantasy Flight games. It's because they do themes so well. So I'm thrilled to have an option like this that incentivizes you to work together as a team and build something thematic. It's great.
Yeah, I think we'll need to see more of what all the cards do, but look, there's no negatives to the processor experience. And I think what's interesting to me the most is down the line, if they wanted to, they could include team up cards for heroes we've already seen, or or redo heroes but have the team up mechanic going on. Like it just seems like a lot of design space for them to utilize.
You could also use team up and then trigger it off of a trait or something instead. So instead of like Ant-Man and Wasp, like this one says, it could say 3 Avengers characters or something along those lines. 4 Guardians.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see what the rules are around it. But yeah, there's definitely like it'd be awesome to see some team themed cards as well. Like Avengers Assemble's pretty close, but yeah, like more trait synergy would be great too. But I really like that they're trying to push this interactivity between heroes because I think it's powerful to say here's a pre-built, let's play, but you both got this card in your deck already that benefits the other player because you're both playing those heroes. Like that, I think that's just a great experience to have.
Yeah, I think we've all seen in Marvel Champions, there are certain games that can go the way where like I'm playing my board state over here and you're playing your board state over there, and never the two, like they interact in a way, but this encourages you to have that feel good moment in the game where you go, because we are a team, look at what we just did. This is awesome, that buzz of playing across the table and coordinating. I think that's what this card incentivizes you to have, that feel good moment that goes, because we are an awesome team, look what we just did. That's really good design, I think.
And it could also be triggered via allies. I'm just thinking, like, if they do have allies for one another, you could have like the leadership player makes the call, the ally version, so that you can trigger your swarm tactics or something, and that would be an interesting little interaction that could come up.
Yeah, I mean, leadership has the answer every time, right? Like, I don't know. I guess we didn't cover before, but so I think Ant-Man's leadership, did they say, and Wasp is aggression? Is that how this is going? Do we know that yet?
We know Quicksilver is protection. I don't know if they've said the others off the top of my head.
I think from memory, I thought everything was confirmed except Scarlet Witch, which was presumed justice but not confirmed. So that's a tentative, but it'd be cool to see what a leadership version of this sort of 3-form hero does versus an aggression version, like Wasp. Yeah, I guess that's enough on those two in the folded cards. I guess we move on to the 2 twins. So there's Quicksilver, which is Pietro Maximoff, and he has the superpowered siblings ability on a 3 recovery hero. And the action is discard 2 cards from your hand, draw 2 cards, or draw 3 cards instead if Wanda Maximoff is in play. Limit once per round. He has a hand size of 6 and hit points is 9. And Wanda Maximoff has the same ability on her alter ego side with a hand size of 6 and 10 hit points. And she has the Mystic trait with 3 recovery. And then Quicksilver on the hero side has a 1 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense with super speed as an ability, which is response after you use one of Quicksilver's basic powers. Ready him, limit once per phase. And he has a hand size of 5. So what do you guys think about what Quicksilver's doing? Are you guys liking the idea of having a hero with low stats again, but he has a once per phase ability, which actually can be utilized? I think it's one of the first times I've seen the limit once per phase, and you can actually trigger it on both sides.
Yeah, the only other once per phase is Thor, and it's really hard to trigger that. But this once per phase, because it is once per phase, means that Quicksilver gets to defend once every single turn, at no cost, effectively, which is interesting. I instantly jumped to Morale Boost because it will last until the end of round, so you can actually get 2 thwart or attack off of it, and then a defense as well. So you're effectively either dealing 2 more damage or dealing a damage and a thwart, or 2 thwarts, and you still get the defense on top of that, which is just kind of silly for such a cheap card.
Thematically, though, someone who can keep readying and exhaust ready. They've nailed the hero and the feel, right? And that's what, as a thematic player, that's just all I care about. Like, yes, theme is right. I feel like I'm playing this hero. Great.
I 100% agree, Bryce. Like the rate at which I'm going to tap that card is equivalent to the pace of play that he
from all the tapping and untapping
that he produces. Because he also has his signature card, the one cost event called Always Be Running, which simply just readies Quicksilver, and so you can, like Joey's saying, try, I guess, presumably we don't know the rest of the sets, but you could like morale boost and then try and always be running a few times in the one turn, provided we get multiple copies of that card. But it seems like he's all about the reading from what it looks like
we generally get multiple copies of cheaper cards.
Yeah.
And 2 skilled strikes in your hand, great. Yeah, I'm gonna hit for 4, ready, hit for 4 again. Like, awesome.
You could also just have thrown both skilled strikes on the first attack and hit for
yeah, but I think
however much.
I think the bigger point is in 4-player, and I know it doesn't really come up much on the Discords, but in 4-player, every other player can play aggression, justice, protection, and give him one of the base stat cards, and then he's all of a sudden a 2/2/2 that can be used twice a turn quite flexibly. Like, that's really interesting to me. Like, that incentivizes me wanting to run those basic cards that are often either because I'm playing solo or because the other hero is not really engaged with that part of the game as much. I never run the 2 copies that I otherwise, would. So yeah, again, I think, like we talked about earlier, I really like that they're leaning into, as a player, I want to engage with your board state a lot more, and I want to help you get to where you need to get to. That can only be good for the game, is how I see it. I forgot that they also showcased Warlock. Joey, a bit of controversy here. You didn't seem too happy with how they treated Warlock. So he was a 3-cost unique ally with 1 thought, 1 attack, protection, 3 health, and the action, spend a mental resource, heal up to 2 damage from Warlock. Why are you upset about this hero, Joey? Tell us more.
It's a relatively well-known mutant character. Like, he's an alien mutant, not a human mutant, but he doesn't have a mutant trait, which means that they're probably not going to trigger. They're probably not going to try and do tribal with mutants, but he's got the X Factor trait, which is a mutant team, which means that even if we do get mutants going forward, we're going to have it'll be split into the various teams. So it'll be X Factor, New Mutants, X-Men, etc. And yes, that kind of makes sense, but those characters all have a thematic tie that we can't really trigger into as a tribal faction if we don't have a trait on them. So it just bugs me a little bit, particularly seeing as Miss Marvel has the Inhuman traits, and Inhumans being like a separate, the similar basic idea where they were peoples, but Miss Marvel has never been part of the Inhuman team. She's always been off on her own, either off on her own or part of the Avengers or Champions. But she still gets the trait. But Warlock can't have a mutant trait for some reason.
Yeah, Bryce, does this card do anything for you? Is there anything screaming at you that wants you to play this card?
Not really, to be honest.
Yeah. What if I told you? I'll try and sell it to you. Okay, you play. Someone plays him, and then someone plays Enraged on him, right? And then every turn he's swinging for 3, and you just have to spend a mental resource every turn, and you can get the 2 health back just every turn.
Yeah, I guess like an advanced Tigra, I could see that. Sure.
You could also
Tigra with extra steps. That's a good one.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is he's in protection. As a solo player, protection is quite bad at thwarting. You can get 2 thwart off him for 1 mental resource. That's actually a very good efficiency exchange. Normally, you would only get about one thwart per resource you put in.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's what they've shown for Quicksilver. I'm very excited to see what they do with him. And we'll talk about the superpower when we get to Wanda. But yeah, I think his hero stuff looks really interesting, and I can't wait like November or December, I guess, is when he comes out. Can't come soon enough because he looks great. All right, so let's just move on to the final hero and the final discussion point. So Scarlet Witch got announced, a new Mystic hero. We already talked about her alter ego side with the superpowered siblings ability, but her hero side introduces a slightly new way to engage with the game that we hadn't seen before, which was, she's a 2-thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense hero with a hand size of 5, and she has the Chaos Control ability, which is an interrupt. When boost icons on an encounter card would be counted, discard the top card of the encounter deck and count the number of boost icons on that card instead. Limit once per phase. And one of her signature cards is a 2-cost event called Hexbolt, which is a spell, superpower, hero action, discard the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. For each card discarded this way that has a boost icon equal to 0, deal 2 damage to an enemy, equal to 1, remove 2 threat from a scheme, equal to 2, draw 1 card, equal to 3 or higher, place a status card on a character. What do you guys think about them bringing out another Mystic, and how do you guys feel with what this hero is trying to do?
The ability to... Oh no, sorry, Joey, you go. You're not gonna...
I'm not gonna complain about anyone that can run the Sorcerer Supreme card. That is a very powerful resource card for next to nothing. So I can put that on Wanda instead of Strange, and it's fine. The most interesting thing here is it actually really, really rewards actually knowing how many of each type of boost there are in the deck. So if you obviously if you hit a 3 and there's nothing higher than 3, which at the moment there isn't, you can safely do it. But if you've hit a 2 and you've now got to ask yourself, have I seen all the 3s? How many 3s or higher are still around? Is it worth getting rid of this now to try and go for a 1 or 0?
Oh, you're talking about when the villain's attacking, like when the villain's activating against you.
Okay,
because I thought you were talking about hex control, because I was like, I think I'd value the lower cards more than the higher cards on that card. But,
but the Hexbolt also, you still need to know those numbers. Like, have all the zeros gone? Are all the zeros gone?
Right.
Because that is a possibility. There's only a few in the standard set.
I mean, that's a lot of cognitive load. Like, I mean, it's rewarding. Don't get me wrong. I think part of me likes the chaos aspect of it. Of like, I don't know, and it flips, and then I just go, "What do you think, guys? Do I up it, lower it, or do I keep it?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, it's chaos." Like, you pick, and then you go, "Oh, I'll do the next one," and then it's worse. So you're like, "Oh," like there's those moments of up and down.
There's fun in not knowing, for sure.
Yeah, but I can also appreciate that if you know the pip density, how rewarding it is when you get that right. Where like it feels like you're playing poker or 21, like you're counting the cards and you pull it off, and like at higher difficulties, I can see that being a really strong edge, I guess. But for me, I think I'm much more the chaos sort of side of things.
Yeah, I may have made a spreadsheet to work so that I could easily see how many pips were in each scenario. And this was well before Wanda was even announced. This was like 3 months ago.
So if I see your name in the credits, I'll know why.
I looked at this and I think I have a bunch of friends that a lot of people I know that play this game, and they're not necessarily going to gravitate towards your Captain Americas or your Iron Man or your Captain Marvels, like the characters that quote unquote are the good ones. They want the heroes that do something weird or different or help the multiplayer team in like an unusual way. And I think this is the perfect base for that. A good chaos control, a good basic ability that allows you to do interesting things, and then build on that all your extra trap cards, and you're the one in the corner who can just save the day when the horrible card comes out. A little bit like Black Widow. It's like, it's all right, guys, I got this. We're fine, thanks to me.
Yep, sorry. No doubt, no doubt. I think I'm looking forward to the Hogwarts battle of who's the better mystic. And I think I really like that it seems like that the mystic trait's really saved for those characters that engage in the game in a really unique way that other heroes aren't able to do. So Doctor Strange had his invocation deck and, a bit of status icon manipulation, and Scarlet Witch seems to be emulating that. I just wanted to quickly cover the superpowered siblings and how that card works. What do you guys think about the idea that the game starts and both players, because you can request actions, can both trigger that ability? But then from then on, you really have to sequence with your partner a way to optimally trigger it, because you can't actually trigger that ability if one player is an alter ego, one player is a hero. You have to time it so that you both are flipped to both alter ego forms. Do you think that's a bit too complicated for players, or do you think it just requires a bit more cooperativity between players as to when you're flipping and keeping an eye on those things?
I think the latter, like something that encourages you to actually communicate with your teammates about whether you're flipping or not and when you're flipping, is a win for the game. Like, I love that. And you'd inevitably have those moments in the game where one of you is concentrating on something else, and the plan fails that you'd already set in motion, where you were both going to be an alter ego. So yeah, I think it's a great mechanic, and people are going to forget it, and that's going to lead to a bit of chaos. So I'm all for that.
I think it's a pretty good mechanic as well. The flip side though is also draw to discard to, or was it discard to draw to? I can't remember which order it was. Is still not that bad an ability. It's obviously better to draw 3, but cycling out the cards you don't need to potentially find cards you do, or more resources so you can afford that big expensive play. Like maybe you want to throw down a mansion and a Quinn carrier or helicarrier on turn 1. That can be quite difficult, but getting two more cards for your deck, you might be able to actually do it.
I mean, a third of your hand, that's significant if your hand size is still 6.
Yeah, in most deck builders, this, like, the base ability is fantastic already. I don't know if other people do this, but I often come back to the principles of deck building game, like the deck building as a genre, not a like a concept, is in like being able to cycle through your deck faster often lets you find the cards that you want, earlier, and then therefore more consistently. So yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about it in that way, that the ability is good regardless. In fact, it kind of puts Bruce Banner to shame a little bit, sadly, because but I think it's the reverse here. I think you have to discard to draw 2 is what, from
That's
what I remember.
correct.
Yeah, so you have to make the decision. Like, it's interesting because you have to commit to a decision before you know the resolution. So that uncertainty makes it enjoyable, I guess.
Yeah, the flip side versus Hulk though is when you flip your character, you actually have an ability.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it more in our Hulk hero review. But yeah, I kind of just like that. It's a different spin on it, but it really transforms how the heroes function.
I mean, we haven't chatted as well. It probably also incentivizes you to know your deck. To Joey's point about knowing the pips. If you know your deck really well, then Wanda just keeps getting better and better, because you know what you need at what point in the game, and when you should be cycling and what you should be cycling, and that cognitive load reduces over time. Yeah.
I think like something you've taught me, Bryce, is you found great reward in playing Iron Man over and over again until you got really proficient at him. And I think there's something to be said about this sort of hero too, where like there is that degree of proficiency that you can get with the hero of like, I know what my outs are and I'm going to draw, X% of the time this card. So I should discard.
It's a pretty fun feeling.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's wrap this preview up with the last card, which is Order and Chaos, the team up Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, which is a hero interrupt. When a treachery card is revealed from the Incanna deck, cancel its when revealed effects, then deal 2 damage to the villain. So it seems like to me it's just a very good way to stop like shadows of the past or nasty when revealed effects, but it doesn't stop surge or other keywords that are coming out. Things like insight are still going to happen. So yes, not as good as some of the other cancel cards we've seen, but it still seems like a very good card to include when you're running both heroes.
Can I ask a question about Team Up? I mean, I might have this wrong. We were talking before about how the superpowered siblings required both of them to be in alter ego, and I just see Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch written on Team Up. Does that mean you both have to be in hero form to trigger it?
Yeah, so same with the Ant-Man and Wasp one. You both have to be in hero form. I guess they haven't really shown the rules for how Team Up works. So we're not sure on the specifics yet. But yeah, there's probably some nuances there that make it so it's quite limited in how you can trigger it. Interestingly,
That's what I'm thinking our previous discussion didn't really factor in that, you know, there's a complexity to playing this card. Like, yes, it's one and it's got a really cool effect, but it's conditional essentially.
Yeah, it's probably limit one per deck or max one per deck for an FFG LCG history. Max one per deck outside of this game and co-op games in general was often the most degenerative experience you could have playing these games. In L5R and Thrones, the max one per deck cards were just absolutely insane. And for L5R, in my opinion, it killed the game to a certain extent, sadly. But here in co-op, I really like that it's quite constrained in what it can do. But when it goes off, it has a quite memorable effect. I guess I was going to point out the team up cards don't name the alter ego. So based on the unique rules, if we ever get future versions of these characters with either different alter egos or just another version of them, you could still include this card.
Or more copies of different allies. So let's say Scott, the Ant-Man pack comes with a Nadia Wasp ally. We could get down the line a Janet Wasp ally, and then you would actually be able to trigger it off of either of those, and you could have both of them in play because of the uniqueness rules. Yep,
yeah, correct. So yeah, so much exciting stuff from the in-flight report. If you had to pick one thing, what are you most excited about, Bryce?
Rocket.
Yeah, and Joey, what are you most excited about?
Ant-Man still.
Yep. I'm going to say Quicksilver. I think Quicksilver is the one for me. So that was our impressions of the in-flight report. So thank you everyone for listening. Bryce, did you have anything you wanted to say before we get off here?
Thanks very much for having me on the podcast, guys. It was real fun. I hope to be back again soon.
Yeah, I love the energy, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I knew you were very keen about Rocket, so it was great to have you on and sharing this during what we're going through at the moment. We'll be back next week with the Hulk Hero Pack review, I think. So until then, thank you everyone, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to another episode of Alter Egos. We hope you enjoyed the discussion this week. If you'd like to talk about it more, you can head on over to our Facebook group, follow us on Twitter, subscribe and review to our podcast, or join our YouTube channel. If you'd like to contact us directly, email us at alteregosmcpodcast@gmail.com. That's alteregosmcpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks once again to all our patrons for supporting the show, and we'll see everyone next week.